and welcome to this week's tutorial. So, I have a little kid, and I don't know that a lot of you also have little kids or your customers have little kids. So, one thing that my toddler and her best friend are both obsessed with is the moon. So, I designed this little moon phase viewfinder so she can start learning about the different phases of the moon. And honestly, I learned a lot about the phases of the moon at the same time, so it's kind of cool for me too. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the rectangle tool. If you have some other shape right here over on the side, just click and hold until all your shapes come up. We want the rectangle tool. I'm just going to click because I have exact dimensions I want to put in. And our first one is going to be a 6-inch square. Now, if you're making this for an adult, you can make it a little bigger. If you're making it for a really little one, I mean, they're probably too small, but go for it. Make it smaller. What I'm trying to get at is that this is adjustable. Customize it to your own desires. And honestly, I think I'll do a leaf shape and maybe some bugs and different types of flowers and all sorts of different viewfinders. So you don't have to just be stuck on moon phases. You can do whatever you want. It's just easiest for me to show you how to design the moon phases, but you're welcome to buy graphics packs if you're not an artist and do all sorts of different versions. And I'd love to see if you do. Okay, so here is our 6-inch square. We're going to come on up here to the fill. This left color shows the fill. And we're going to change it from a white fill to a none fill. So that little red slash mark through indicates that none. All right, now we're going to click on this dial and just pull it in to round all the corners. And I don't want it that round. I'm going to do like a 0.14 inch rounding, or 1.15 is fine. If you prefer a different amount of rounding, go for it. This is yours. You get to do whatever you want with it. Back to your selection tool and just kind of move it up, because we're going to add a handle and we want that handle to be to have room as well. Right now, we're not going to do the handle just yet. We're going to add the inside bit first. So I'm going to just create another rectangle. This one will be 3 inches by 3 inches. And I'm not personally going to round these corners. You are welcome to. Okay. Now I'm going to click somewhere and drag until my little sort of selection box is touching both squares. And I'm going to use my align panel, which is right here. If you don't have the align panel, it's object align, and you'll see the same options just in word form. And I'm going to use the horizontal align center tool and the vertical align center tool. And you see that that just got everything lined up really beautifully without me having to eyeball it. I am a notoriously terrible eyeballer, and probably you are too. Not to knock your skills, but if I know anything about you, it's that you are probably also not great at eyeballing. Either. So here we go. Now let's add the handle. So we're going to create yet another rectangle, and this one is going to be, again, for mine, it's going to be 1.5 inches wide, and I'm going to do 4 inches tall. Now, if this looks too tall or too short, too thin or too thick for you, adjust accordingly. And then I'm also going to round these corners, but only to like a 0.1 maybe, something like that. Okay, so on these smaller shapes, the rounding looks a lot different. So the same size rounding would be too much for the handle. And I do want this to be centered. So you can either use your smart guides and you see these little magenta lines that show, oh, it's intersecting. That means it's centered. And I'm going to scoot it up enough that it overlaps so that the rounded top corner isn't going to make like a weird dent. So let me just show you what I mean by that. If I had this, perfectly aligned and I went to unite, this handle would go and then it would come out, and I don't want that. So I'm going to just scooch this up enough that I'm going to have a perfect 90-degree angle when I do the next step, which is to unite the outer square only. Don't select this inner square, just the outer one. And then I'm going to hold down Shift and click this handle. Now, yes, there are a million different ways you can select, but that's what I'm doing right now. You can do whatever you want. So select the outer square, select the handle, come to your Pathfinder panel and click this one, click to unite. If you don't have that Pathfinder panel, it's Window Pathfinder and it'll open up with all of your options. Okay, cool. So now I actually have the viewfinder shape. And as I mentioned before, you can customize this to anything. You can do it with household objects. You could do it with bugs. My kid hates bugs with a fiery passion, so probably not going to do that one. You could do flowers, anything that you want, leaves, herbs, tree bark, whatever, get really creative with these because they're, I think they're very cool. Okay, so now that we have our basic viewfinder shape, I'm going to just scoot over to this blank spot and I'm going to start working on our moon shapes. Okay, As you might imagine, we're just going to use a whole bunch of different circles and cut different amounts off of them to make our moons. So come to that rectangle tool, click and hold, pop until the menu pops out, click ellipse tool, and I'm going to do, let's do like a 0.75 by 0.75 inch moon shape. And we can adjust that as we go, but what we want here is that when we put it up onto this outer square, we want room not only for the shape, but also for the label underneath. Okay, so I'm going to write, like for this one, I would write new moon. Actually, it's going to go down here. New moon underneath. So we want room for the shape itself and also text. And maybe we want to do like a 1 inch instead. Is that too big? It is. So yeah, let's go back to that 0.75. You can eyeball it, you can adjust whatever you want. And now that we have our circle size decided, just come on over to the edge and make sure you have lots of space because we're going to do all of them just in a row. And then we will place them in a way that makes sense over here. And I'll kind of show you some tricks for centering when you're using a complex shape like that over there. All right, so this is going to be my new moon. I'm indicating that with just a scored line. This one's going to be scored, not cut. So we should go ahead and just change the line color, right? So that will score, not cut. I'm going to copy it and paste it. And now we're going to do black, but we're also going to swap the fill and stroke, okay? I'm going to be engraving all of my moon shapes. You could certainly also do them all scored if you want this to cut faster. The problem with that is that then it gets a little tricky to indicate the new moon versus the full moon, but that's up to you. Live your life however you see fit. Okay, so I guess let's go ahead and actually label as we go. So I'm going to use all lowercase, and I'm going to use the font that is, I think it's called Nora. Yes, I think it's a nice little, I think it's a cool font. And I'm just going to keep it that small 12-point font for now. Actually, let's go ahead and just bump it up a little to a 14-point font. Okay, so new moon. And then as we have let's just zoom into this so you can see what's going on. The Glowforge does not read fonts or text. So what you have to do is type out your letters and then create outlines. So right click and create outlines. Okay. If you're using a script font here, totally fine. But go ahead and make sure you use the Pathfinder panel and click to unite so that your font works appropriately. Once you have done your create outlines, click and drag to select both the new moon and the text that says new moon. Come over to your align panel, horizontal align center. And let's see, we're going to just scoot up the text a little bit here. And once you like that distance, go ahead and just select both and go to object group. And that'll make centering things easier later on. Now, we are going to go ahead and create the rest of our shapes. I want to just say that this is specific to the northern hemisphere. You'll have to swap things around if you're in the southern hemisphere or if most of your customers are in the southern hemisphere. But if you're US based, follow along with this. Okay, so we're going to use, to make the waxing crescent moon, we want the shape to show up on the right side in the northern hemisphere. So copy and paste. I'm going to turn this other one, let's just say yellow so that we can see it, but it gives us a visual of what it's going to look like. Okay, and you just want to overlap these circles until it looks like your ideal crescent moon. Yours might be thicker than mine, yours might be thinner than mine, but just, kind of shift it around until it looks like a crescent moon to you. You are very likely going to want to select both and vertical align center just to make sure it's in the right spot and it's nice and symmetrical in that direction. Now, sometimes when you're making a crescent moon, let's see if it happens this time. Sometimes you'll get the crescent moon shape and then a couple weird points outward. If that happens, just make your black shape a 0.99. I'm sorry, no, 0.745, like just a smidgy bit smaller, okay? But let's just hope for the best this time. So you'll want the part you're deleting to be in the front, okay? And you'll want your actual waxing crescent moon shape, the part you're going to engrave, to be on the right and on the bottom. Once you've got it how you want it, select both and click on Pathfinder panel minus front. And it worked fine here. So I didn't have any weird extra points sticking out on this side. Okay, we're going to use our text tool, and it's still in that 14-point font, and I need to write waxing crescent. And I think I'm going to make this smaller to a 12-point font just so that it kind of fits neatly underneath. You guys can make your own decisions about font sizes. What I want is that I want it to be large enough that it will engrave nicely through masking, and I want it to be small enough that it, looks nice. So right click, create your outlines. Come on. There we go. And then select both and horizontal align center. Before we object group, we want this to be nice and lined up so that everything is kind of evenly spaced here. So select both of your moons. And your moon is already, or my moon is already aligned on the top there. But if yours is not, remember we already grouped this one over here, so that makes it a little tricky. Instead of doing a center, we're going to vertical align top. So it just kind of goes up, and the top of this is aligned with the top of that. And you can do the same thing with the wording and kind of do it on the bottom. Uh-oh, no you can't. So what you'll want to do, I guess, is not group things yet. So object, ungroup. And that way we can select your text and center it. Select your moons and center those. Again, make sure individually that these are horizontally aligned centered. It's a lot of like precise placement stuff, and I know it's not the most fun necessarily. Okay, but it's important in making sure that your finished design looks professional. Okay. So here we are. Let's go ahead. I don't remember what we had placed. Okay. So yeah, paste another circle. And this one is going to be the first quarter moon. So we're going to use a rectangle and just make sure that it lines up perfectly with half of your circle. Okay. And you can change it to yellow if it makes it easier for you to visualize what's going to be there, what's not going to be there. Okay. And so we can see here that if we zoom in and hover over, I'm not clicking the circle, I'm just hovering, you can see that this little X right in the middle is perfectly aligned. So this rectangle is exactly where it needs to be. Select both, Pathfinder minus front, and there is your first quarter moon. I'm just going to show you how to do the waxing gibbous shape, and then you'll just repeat this process here with your text. So this one is first quarter moon. And I'm okay with the 12-point font there. Okay. And then we need to paste another moon here. This one, we're also going to, here, let's actually paste another one in case we need it in a second. And then we're going to copy paste this crescent. And we want this crescent to be sliced off of the left side. Okay, so we're going to use this flip horizontally. Okay, or you can do that under Object Transform Reflect. Okay, so we can turn this yellow so that you know that it's going to be deleted. All right, and then you can select both of these. You want to, let's see here, vertical align center it. And then you want to select both of them again and left align horizontal. So that's a good way. And again, you're going to be deleting this or minus front, this left crescent moon. So again, it can be a little bit tricky. And I think we may end up having the issue with the extra little points here. So the way that I can tell is that I can see a tiny smidgy bit of this black color right on the edge there. So what I'm going to do before I do anything else is select just the black moon. Don't select the yellow, just select the black. And instead of 0.75, I'm going to do 0.745. So just taking off the smidgiest bit of height there. And I'm making sure that my width and height proportions are locked so it will automatically change the height too. Okay. And now that is just fine. Okay. And so now you want to select them both, do that minus front, and you've got your waxing gibbous moon. Whew. I know it's a lot of little things to follow along with and think about, and it feels kind of persnickety, I guess, but it makes sure that everything is looking how it needs to at the end. So waxing gibbous. All right, cool. And then go ahead and create your outlines. I don't know, since I updated my computer, I guess I updated my software, And ever since then, when I go to right click and create outlines, it's way on the other side and I really hate it. So I hope yours doesn't look like that too. Okay, so now we have our waxing gibbous. This one's going to be our full moon and it's going to be fully engraved and then just write full moon underneath. Now what are you going to do for the rest of it? Well, you can actually just select these three that you already created. You don't have to rebuild these again, thank goodness, and just copy them. So you can go to edit, copy, click off somewhere, edit, paste, and then use this this flip horizontal button, okay? And put them over here. And then just so that you're aware, because I'm going to skip ahead so you don't have to watch me type everything and align everything just like I've showed you a million times already. So you've got the full moon. You're going to have the waning gibbous. You're going to have the last quarter and then the waning crescent. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording now. I'm going to skip ahead to show you how I'll place it actually on the viewfinder. See you in a minute. Okay, so here we are. I have all of my moon phases created and labeled. I have all of my text kind of centered. I have all of my moon phases aligned so that basically what we want is that our spacing between the word and the moon phase to be consistent for each piece. And then I have object grouped each moon phase with its label. Okay, hopefully you're at that same spot. If not, pause for a minute and come catch up. So I'm going to not worry so much about perfect placement right now. I just want to get it roughly where it's going to go. So new moon at the bottom. I'm going to put the full moon at the top. Let's see here. So from your new moon, you then go waxing crescent. Then you've got your first quarter. Then you've got your waxing gibbous. And again, I'm just roughly placing. I'm not worried about perfect placement yet. We will get there. Then you have your waning gibbous up in this corner. You have your last quarter here. And you have your waning crescent down here. Okay, cool. This looks pretty decent already, gotta say. But now we want to center things kind of within their little row. So it can be tricky to get things perfectly centered, like between the top line here and this line here, okay? Because if you try to just select everything, I mean, these shapes are operating separately, so it's not going to work how you want it to. My workaround for that is that I create a new rectangle. So from the top of this row to the bottom, so basically the height is the only thing that matters here. You don't want it so wide that it's covering everything. You just want to put it somewhere that it's out of the way and exactly the right height. Okay, and then you can select, because you've got this all grouped, right? That's why that's important. Select and then hold down shift while you click the rectangle, click the full moon, click the waning gibbous, and you can come over and use your align panel to vertically align center. Now, it's all centered and beautiful, except you see that it actually came, let's zoom in, it's not, this rectangle is not perfectly placed anymore, okay? And that tells you you need to move everything up. So I'm using my arrow key to just gently 1, 2, 3, okay? And center it as much as you can right there. If you care that this is hanging over just a smidge, it really bothers you, you can zoom in even more. The more that you zoom, the finer degree of control you get. And instead of using your arrow key then, just grab this center button, click, and just drag it until it's perfect. Okay? Now for me, that amount of off did not bother me, but everybody's different. Okay, we're gonna repeat that for the bottom here. And you can just use the same height because it's the same size. So you can just use that same rectangle for this. And you can just click and drag to select all of that, make sure nothing else is selected and that it's working perfectly. And then again, vertical align center. And this time your rectangle stayed in the right spot and just your moons moved around. So that's great. Now you can actually, if you want, use the same rectangle and just come over to your transform panel and type in 90 degrees. And it should be still the right size, and it is perfect. Okay, so again, the important part is that it's as perfectly aligned to these lines as possible, and then just repeat. You're going to select all of those, right? And this time we're not doing the vertical align center because this is a different dimension. We're going to do the horizontal align center. And now your rectangle moved over, so just ooch it over with your arrow keys until it looks how you want it. Use the same rectangle for this side. Okay, now yes, there are always, or often with Illustrator, there are millions, dozens, several ways to do the same thing. So if you have a different technique that you like for this, that's fine. This is just what I've figured out that works for me. And again, we're doing a horizontal align center here and scooch our rectangle back over till it's perfectly placed. Okay, now delete that rectangle. We don't want that there. Goodbye. At this point, this is ready to save. If you like how it looks, everything is perfectly centered and not symmetrical, but perfectly centered and where it needs to be. Your distance between your fonts and your moon phases are consistent. Everything is looking nice. You have remembered to change the color of your new moon stroke so that it will score rather than cut out. Although it could kind of be a cool stylistic look for it to cut instead. All right, and at this point, you can go ahead and save as SVG 1.0, turn off your responsiveness, and you are good to go. If you make one of these, I would really love to see it. I would love, especially if you don't do moon phases and you do a different thing around the edge, show me. I would love to see your ideas for this. My kid is going to love these this spring, and I hope that yours will or your customers will as well. All right, see you next week.